KTN News. Get the whole story.
Well, good morning. You're right on time for the Sunday Premier Political Show, Inside Politics. Thank you for joining us, where we evaluate the biggest political intrigues that have happened in the last week. Now, it seems Jubilee are putting their house in order following a parliamentary group meeting with President Uhuru Kenyatta and an upcoming NDC that will mark the president's commencement of campaigns. Is it too late to revive Jubilee Party? And what of the project claims that have been fueled by Uhuru picking Raila's running mate in Azimio la Umoja? We'll get to discuss that in totality, and we'll equally evaluate what the One Kenya Alliance principals just did this week. They signed a deed of assignment. And the big question is One Kenya Alliance warming up to Raila's Azimio and equally the contentious Elections Amendment Bill? So much political fodder coming from this particular bill, which is on the floor of the House, sponsored by the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. Is it a case of 2 steps forward and 5 steps backward when it comes to the inclusion of manual transmission when it comes to the elections? So much to talk about, so little time. Remember, you can interact with us equally on social media using the hashtag Inside Politics. We'll definitely get to sample your views as we continue with the broadcast. Before I get to introduce my panelists, let's just take a look at one of the major stories we'll be evaluating, which is stemming from that particular PG meeting with President Uhuru Kenyatta just this week, Friday. Now, President Uhuru Kenyatta has officially kicked off efforts to revamp the Jubilee Party ahead of the upcoming elections. President Kenyatta chaired a Jubilee Party's parliamentary group meeting at State House, Nairobi, ahead of the party's forthcoming National Delegates Conference, where he's likely to endorse ODM leader Raila Odinga as his preferred successor. And as KTN's political affairs reporter Daniel Kariuki reports, sources say the president will use the NDC to explain his reasons for backing Raila's candidature, as well as unveil his planned tours of the Mount Kenya region to rally support for the opposition leader. Listen in.
After numerous postponements of the Jubilee Party National Delegates Conference, the latest events, if anything to go by, shows clear signs the ruling party that has over the last 4 years developed cracks is set to be rejuvenated as it seeks to regain its confidence ahead of the much anticipated elections. Friday, the party leader, President Uhuru Kenyatta, who has been silent on the rocky state of the party, was the host of members of parliament under the Jubilee umbrella. However, those present, largely those who have stuck to his support.
We wanted to make it very, very clear that Jubilee is not dead, nor was it asleep. Jubilee was working.
Coming at a point that has seen most of its members shift allegiance to the now popularized UDA party under President Kenyatta's principal assistant, Deputy President William Ruto, the Jubilee Party members held the meeting ahead of the NDC set for the end of the month.
For us, we are focused on our Jubilee agenda. We are not focused on individuals who are leaving the party, including the Deputy President. We are not interested. Wherever they are going, we wish them well.
Part of the meeting was the agenda that will be handled during the NDC. Jubilee Party, as part of its revamping, is expected to change the symbol and the seal. Already reports indicate the party may settle for a dove replacing the clasped hands, and the party's motto, Tuko Pamoja, has now been changed to Mbele Pamoja. The party says they have resolved it will be full throttle this political season, since the party has not been actively engaged in politics. Sources say the president said that he was now ready to do politics, that Jubilee had achieved much of its intended agenda.
You see more activities of Jubilee in the coming days. You see more activities, opening of offices, refurbishing of offices. You see even so many defections of people coming into the party. And we are also alive to the fact there are also other people who would be leaving the party.
We persuaded the president that he has a good dream, he has a good vision for this country, that he must continue to be the party leader of Jubilee. We believe in his vision, we believe in his energy. He means well, and who is more prepared to understand Kenya more than the president?
The meeting at State House comes days before the party's NDC that is expected to ratify support for the candidature of ODM leader Raila Odinga, who has taken a break from his Azimio la Umoja countrywide campaigns for the next 10 days to travel abroad. At the same time, the meeting deliberated on how parties allied to the Azimio la Umoja movement backing Raila's candidature will hold their respective NDCs simultaneously to ratify their support for the ODM leader in the coming elections.
The candidate who will be backed by Jubilee, the candidate who will be backed by our outfit, I know that is a person who is going to win this election. I have no doubt in my mind. And it's none other than Raila Amolo Odinga.
That's why we need a president, the next president, who believes in the same vision of the president, so that he can complete the project that was started. Of the many candidates who are there, the only man who has remained consistent for the good of the country is Raila Amolo Odinga.
Sources at State House disclosed that the president is set to traverse the Mount Kenya region, reversing inroads made by his deputy in the last couple of years as he rallies the region to support his preferred candidate. A notice issued by Jubilee Party Secretary General Raphael Tuju listed the NDC's agenda as including to review, formulate and/or ratify proposed changes to Jubilee Party policies, amend, review and/or ratify proposed changes to Jubilee Party constitution to comply with the current electoral laws. This will be the second NDC since 2016. Daniel Kariuki, KTN News.
Well, as that report by Duncan Kariuki highlights, Jubilee Party is set to have the National Delegates Conference on February 25th, running to the 26th. And it seems President Uhuru Kenyatta's post-presidency legacy has been secured as the parliamentary group meeting endorsed the president to continue steering the party post-August 9th. Allow me to introduce my panelists joining me in studio. We definitely have a full house right here. Javas Bigambo, it's great to see. It's been a while.
Sure, it's been for your time. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your time. Karibu, political analyst right there. We're equally joined by Dismas Mukua, political risk analyst. Always a pleasure. Karibu.
Asante sana.
Asante for your time. And from Kakamega Bureau, we're joined by Susan Mangeni, who's a governance analyst. She'll be joining us a little bit later on, and equally via way of Zoom from Dubai, we're joined by Mark Bichachi, who's a communications strategist. So gentlemen and lady, asante sana for your time. Let's begin right here in studio. As I mentioned, President Uhuru Kenyatta's post-presidency legacy seems to be secured, and equally we saw news that Uhuru is set to pick Raila's deputy in the Azimio coalition. Dismas, I'd like to begin with you. Despite the gravitas around the politician that is Raila Odinga, we've seen speculation that he might be a project, and this particular piece of news fueled that particular narrative. What's your take on that as we react to the PG meeting that was held on Friday?
Well, anybody who's been in Kenya from 2017 would know one thing, that President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta and Raila Odinga had created a partnership, some sort of a shareholding company. What Kenyans did not know was the MOU, the unwritten MOU, and what lawyers would refer to as legitimate expectations from President Kenyatta and Raila Odinga. But in the last couple of days, it's becoming very clear on what is in place for the two. And the raison d'etre now of Azimio la Umoja, it seems to me, is to ensure that President Kenyatta and his brother Raila Odinga have got a firm hold of Kenya for the next 10 years. And it seems to me that what they're looking for is some sort of what happened in Russia. You recall at some stage when the Russian President Vladimir Putin was a president, he decided to become a prime minister, then he became a president. So there was some sort of a revolving door with the prime minister, then Dmitry Medvedev, that the person controlling the show determines when he's going to be a president and when he's going to become a prime minister, because he's got a lot of political power, he's got a lot of economic power, and he's got a lot of social capital. And the same situation would obtain in DRC Congo, where President Kabila, despite the fact that he's no longer the president of DRC, he's got more powers than Felix Tshisekedi, who is supposed to be the president. Now, after the Jubilee Parliamentary Group meeting, three things which came out, which confirms the fears of most Kenyans, that in fact Raila Odinga is an Azimio project, and the patron of Azimio is President Kenyatta. Number one, they indicated they want him to head on and retain the position as a party leader. President Mwai Kibaki set a standard that when you're leaving office, you shouldn't cling to any political office. Number two, they indicated they want to have a majority in the National Assembly, that's Jubilee, to have a majority in the National Assembly, have a majority in the Senate, have a majority in at least 30 counties, and in the Council of Governors. Now, a similar situation obtains in DRC, where Kabila has got a majority everywhere. In fact, when he was leaving office, there was an unwritten contract with Tshisekedi that there are a number of people you cannot fire. Some people in the military, some people in the intelligence, and everything else. So now the question in everybody's mind, if, say, Raila Odinga becomes president of the Republic of Kenya, if Raila Odinga becomes the fifth, who will be running Kenya? Is it Raila Odinga, or will it be President Kenyatta? Especially if President Kenyatta, or rather Jubilee, has got a majority in the National Assembly and in the Senate and in these counties, because their target is 30. And we cannot underestimate President Kenyatta, because right now he sits, he's got access to a lot of information, he's got access to intelligence, he's got access to economic power, political power, social capital, and everything else, and he can easily move the needle in his interest. So the big question would be that if Raila is a project, whose interest is he serving? Is he serving Mora's interest, or is he serving President Kenyatta's interest? Now, if he's going to be serving President Kenyatta's interest, are those interests consistent with our national and public interests?
Well,
that remains the big question.
That's an interesting way to look at it. Jarvis, do you hold the same idea? Is such a scenario likely possible in this day and age?
Well, first, when the Jubilee Parliamentary Group meeting had their meeting, took place rather, and then the papers carried the headline that President Kenyatta is to pick Raila Odinga as running mate. One question that started hanging on my mental sky was this. Is Raila Odinga's candidature the brainchild of Uhuru Kenyatta? Is Raila Odinga his own candidate, his own man? Now, I think the answer to that question cannot be singularly in the affirmative, because I think after the handshake, there seems to be a joint pact between these two men. What is clear is that Raila Odinga seems to be in need of the help of Uhuru Kenyatta so as to become president. So Raila Odinga, of course, effectively is using Uhuru Kenyatta as his political crutches, without which I think he will wobble a bit because of the nature and the dynamic of this kind of campaign in this electoral cycle. By way of the sentiment of my friend Mukua, of course, it is a bit difficult to negate the fact that there are some unspoken interests that are driving the very intricate interest of Uhuru Kenyatta, the president, to support Raila Odinga's candidature. And having departed from his initial position of committing to support DP William Ruto as his preferred candidate, as the position that he earlier held when we were heading into the election of 2017. Now, what Kenyans, of course, should get to ask themselves to worry about is this. Is it that the drive, the interest, the steering of this country is a question of private interests and boardroom decisions? I'm not saying that should they ask themselves, I'm saying they should be worried about. Because now what seems even to be more clearer is the long theory that has been within the political discourse as to the influence, power, and efficacy to that extent of the deep state, the mythical deep state. Because now it seems that the state is, of course, fully behind Raila Odinga's candidature. But now, if President Uhuru Kenyatta gets to choose Raila Odinga's running mate, one, who is that person likely to be? Is it a person that is in a way related to him in terms of consanguinity? Is it somebody that is close to him politically for the purpose of driving his private personal interests? Because having served as president for 2 terms, it is easy to imagine that the allure of power, the hangover of power, is that which now necessitates this drive by the sitting president to ensure that he still retains to control issues behind the curtains while he's out of power, having retired.
Let me ask you, and just briefly, do you think Jubilee can revive itself at this point in time?
Well, it is possible for Jubilee to revive itself. Already we are seeing efforts. But I think it's a bit too late in the day. Now, there has been waning public confidence, glaciated public confidence in Jubilee. In fact, even various members of whether Parliament, Senate, etc., elected on the Jubilee ticket have now moved base to identify with other political parties. Now, when you look at the history of political parties headed by an outgoing president, whether we're looking at it through the lenses of the time of the Democratic Party, whether we're looking at it through the lenses of KANU, whether we're looking at it through the lenses of PNU, we realize that the moment a party's leadership has left power by way of retirement as having been president here in Kenya, that party loses its limbs. And here, question would be, as we head into the election, who will be presiding over the affairs of Jubilee as its party leader? Because it is the vision, the power, and the influence of the party leader that gives the party its charm and to starve the public. If at all the party will be led still by President Kenyatta, who will be out of power, driving no active interests at the time, then I think reviving Jubilee is possible, but Jubilee cannot regain the gravitas that it had. It cannot get back its political muscle that it had.
Well, we'll definitely get to evaluate that same question. Let me pose it to Susan Mangeni, as I mentioned, who's joining us from our Kakamega Bureau. Number one, is it possible to revive the Jubilee Party? And equally, after that particular parliamentary group meeting at State House, it was clear that perhaps President Uhuru Kenyatta will hit the ground running in terms of campaigning, at least after the NDC that is set later on this month. Well, what's your take on that? Because many people have added their voice in terms of the president getting involved directly in his succession. Is it a poison chalice from where you sit?
Thank you, Jesse, and pass my regards to Mokua and Javas. Okay, I've joined in while I think it was Javas who was on the floor. And let me just pick up from where he left and say this, that the president attempt to kind of influence this year's election, that's August 2022 election, is a clear confirmation that he is not ready to leave power. Because if we are in a democratic society where we believe in the choice of the people, and our constitution clearly states that the people have the power to determine who elects them. And we've been seeing this since 2018, going around with Honorable Raila, selling him to Kenya as if he's selling tomatoes. Then it shows there is something that either he's afraid, either he knows that he has not done much to leave a legacy behind, and therefore he wants to continue ruling this country through backdoor. So, and this is not the first time we are confronted as a nation with projects, State House projects or presidential projects. You remember in 2002, His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta joined into the presidency as a project in 2002, and Kenya resoundingly said no to the late President Moi. And in 2013, we saw the former President Kibaki. He was a bit passive in all this succession politics of who was going to succeed him, you know, so he played a very passive role. And much as people say that his henchmen were there and were supporting President, now the current President Uhuru Kenyatta, but we didn't see much of him trying to force someone on Kenyans, trying to use power, trying to amend laws, trying to go everywhere, just to trying to, like you're forcing this person down the throat of Kenyans. And Right Honorable Raila Odinga has been in this field for long, and I think he's not the kind of a person right now who should be brought to Kenyans like a project, like he's incapable of winning this presidency. I believe he is capable. He can win this presidency if he likes, you know, and if he puts more efforts into it. So I think by the just sheer virtue that President Kenyatta is hell-bent in telling the whole world that this is my project, and whether you like it or not, I'm going to do everything I can, including reviving the now, you know, defunct Jubilee party, that everybody knows that 6 months to the election is not possible to put together a national party that it was to redeem Jubilee. I think it's in itself, it's a testimony that President Uhuru Kenyatta is not ready to leave the office. He's not ready to leave power. And we've seen him last week telling his Jubilee people that he wants to choose or to participate in the selection of who is going to be the running mate. I want to believe that if the law really, if there was a way that the law allowed him to have himself as the running mate, then I'm sure the name we'll be talking about here will be Uhuru Kenyatta becoming the running mate of Raila Odinga. So this president of Azimio is not really a Raila Amolo Odinga's president, is a Uhuru Kenyatta president. Okay,
Susan, I think your point is definitely across, but it's equal. It's proper to know that the president mentioned kutangulia sio kufika, and perhaps Jubilee can be revived barely 6 months to the election. Let's bring in Mark Bichachi. As I mentioned, he's joining us via Zoom. Bichachi, it seems the president is hell-bent, according to the panelists, on making Raila Odinga his successor. From the optics, do you believe this is the case? And equally, what do you make of the plans to revive Jubilee? Briefly, Bichachi.
Well, I wonder why mine has to be brief when everyone else has given an encyclopedia of Vladimir Putin's moves in the last 20-odd years. Number one, let me be very clear that I wrote an article 2 years ago before I was kicked out of a certain newspaper. And the article was this, that Uhuru Kenyatta owes this country a succession plan. Why did I say that? In basic leadership, and I will invite my fellow panelists to also remember that in their own families and wills, it behooves them to choose carefully who has the capacity, the diligence, and the heart to continue the good work they did while they were still at the helms of their families. I wonder then why it is an issue when Uhuru said kumi yangu and kumi ya huyu jamaa. No one complained, and yet it was the very same promise. Number two, let us also remember that if there is someone who is antithetical to the ideals that Uhuru Kenyatta espouses today, it is the person of William Ruto. It is his own deputy who has flagged that the Big Four has failed. It is his own deputy that fought the BPI, and it is his own deputy who has created a place of refuge for every single politician facing a corruption charge, every single person who is quote unquote in the wash business. They have found safe haven in the arms and the ambit of William Ruto. And therefore my question to my fellow Kenyans, and yes?
That there's no collision with monopoly over corruption, you know that, right?
Let me just finish. The people will decide because I said in quotes, I said allegedly, okay? So if that is the case, Why then is there an expectation, and then it's a democratic expectation, that if he today approved William Ruto, it is okay, but not Raila Odinga? Secondly, when we say Raila Odinga is a project, who has come second and indeed arguably won some of the elections held in the last 3 election cycles? It is Raila Odinga. Have the people who voted for him disappeared into the ether, and now the rest of the people have to be forced to vote for Raila Odinga? And then what, pray tell me, is this ideology that my sister in Kakamega, who even forgot to say hello to me, he says that people are being forced by what? Gun or bullet? You know, this is very funny. Doesn't Uhuru Kenyatta have a vote? Didn't Mwai Kibaki vote? I am very perturbed by the amount of propaganda we are pushing here to try and paint a picture as though if I was a chief, forget about a president, and I had projects going on in my location, and I was asked, who do I want to take over? As though I would not choose among the sub-chiefs and say, this is the person who's best suited. Today at Standard Group, there is a succession plan. And I have no idea in my mind of any person who has shown loyalty and fealty to the projects that the President Uhuru Kenyatta is moving more than Raila Odinga. He'd be a fool to say that he's going to support someone who's not going to complete the projects that he has. So this ideology that we're trying to brand him as Vladimir Putin, when he's obviously not changed the constitution, when he's obviously stepping aside from power, and to pretend that naming a deputy president means he's holding on to power is nonsensical.
Okay, Bichachi, I think your point is definitely across. Bichachi, your point is definitely across. Let me just echo your sentiments with the other panelists. Briefly, Dismas, does Uhuru owe Kenya succession plan? Briefly.
Well, you know, what the president must do, President Kenyatta, is to ensure that we have got a successful election, that it's held under an environment of peace and stability. And for some reason, if he feels that the current crop of leadership is not very solid, he's got an obligation to guide the nation. So in my view, he's got a constitutional right to engage in succession planning and even determine whoever he wants to become the president. But the question remains, is President Kenyatta's selfish interest consistent with our national and public interest? Is he doing this for the good of Kenya, or is he doing this for the good of himself? That's number one. Number two, he spoke about the UK politics, and he's raised very pertinent issues. That's Mark Bichachi. But have you ever seen a Republican president endorsing a Democrat candidate, or a Democrat president endorsing a Republican president? Number three, if indeed President Kenyatta gets to nominate Raila as a running mate, and Raila becomes the president, and then you've got this deputy president who's got a majority in the National Assembly, Senate, Council of Governors, and over 30 counties, as they've indicated, who will be running the nation?
All right.
Are we not likely to have another Uhuru Ruto style, whereby the deputy decides to chart his own path, and Raila Odinga will be struck and he'll have no options? And in my view, in all these conversations, let's ask ourselves, what serves our national and public interest?
All right, we have to take a break. We have to take a break. Just hold on to your thought kindly. We'll be back with your input. Let me just sample 1 or 2 tweets. Alex Manyore, ask a question. Questions, is it Uhuru, the one selecting Raila's deputy? Who will the deputy answer to? Is it President Raila, or the former President Uhuru, or the people? That's one of the questions. Don Sabwa equally tweets, there's a big propaganda being perpetuated by the media and Tanga that Uhuru is wrong to participate in the succession plan. Kibaki did it. Let's open our eyes. Let's take a short break on that particular note. We'll be back with more deliberations on that, and equally the contentious Elections Amendment Bill. We've seen politicians reacting to it. We'll take a look at the content of this particular bill and what changes it might bring if it passes in terms of the August 9th general election. Stay with us.
KTN News. Get the whole story.